created equal. They're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And it mentions a few of those, and it says it's the purpose of government to secure those rights. Okay? So government is supposed to secure our God-given rights. When I talk to legislators and city council and stuff like that, I say, what do you think your job is? Oh, we take money and we spend it. We have a hard job because we're dividing up a lot of money. There's a lot of people asking for money, and there's not enough to go around, but we do the best we can. No! Read the Declaration. Your job is to secure God-given rights. If you happen to spend money while you're doing that, that's part of your job. But if you think your job is just redistributing wealth, you're in the wrong program. But that's what most of them think. But anyway, so it says it's the purpose of government to secure God-given rights. Okay, and then it goes on to say that when government becomes destructive of these ends, it's the right of the people to alter or abolish the government. And that's what they were doing with the Declaration. The king has destroyed God-given rights, and so they're going to abolish that government and reinstitute a new government. That's what the Declaration was about. Then they go on to talk about 27 offenses the king had done to justify their actions, and then they go in and say, they pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to that effort. Okay? So that's the Declaration. That's the spiritual birth, if you will, the precursor to the United States Constitution. Okay? Well, when the Constitution was written, they held those principles sacred. They said, those guys were right. Well, they didn't say it in writing there, but the way they wrote the document says, yeah, they were right. And so the right of the people to alter or abolish their government was incorporated into the United States Constitution under Article 5. Okay, that's the amendment process. There's two ways to amend. One is 2/3 of both houses of Congress will say, we propose this amendment. Once 2/3 of both houses of Congress have done that, they send it out to the states, and 3/4 of the states have to ratify it before it becomes an amendment. I know there's people in here that probably understand that what I'm going to say is not correct right now, but I'll say it without having to explain it too much. That's happened 27 times. Now the reason I caveat that a little bit, because there have been some instances where it really hasn't been ratified properly. Okay, some of you probably understand that. But just without going into another shiny object discussion with that, I'll just say that's happened 27 times. That's how we've got all 27 of our amendments. 2/3 of both houses, they propose, then they send it out for ratification of 3/4 of the states. There's another way to change the Constitution, and that's when, in today's time, 2/3 of the states, that's 34 states, apply for a convention. Okay? And if you want to get off on a really good tangent on this, we can see how dangerous that would be today. Because we don't have statesmen today like we had, back in 1787. We have politicians that are very corrupt. And that's the nicest thing I can say. Okay? Because it's a mixed audience. But at any rate, we have a terrible condition right now. If we were to call a convention is an autonomous body. What does that mean?
Started by choice.
They're what?
A choice body of people also put together to serve a certain purpose.
But autonomous means they're standalone and independent. Okay? And here's what happened in 1787. They were called together to revise the existing Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. Revise, if you look it up in the earliest American dictionary there is, means amend. They were called to amend. But as an autonomous body, they had the authority to set that Constitution aside, which they did, and they wrote an entirely new Constitution. They were within their rights to do that because of their autonomous nature. They're standalone and independent. Okay? Fortunately, they were good and honorable and wise men, as Lieutenant Benson said a minute ago in your presentation there. So, we got what we got. And everybody says, oh, Scott, you're just a worrywart, and there's still this thing about 3/4 of the states have got to ratify it. Little known fact, the Constitution that was in place when the founders got together in May of 1787 said that any changes required 100% of the states to agree. Okay, now without any authorization, authority, approval, anything like that you might want to say, from Congress, from the states, or from the people, The men that wrote the Constitution of 1787 changed the ratification process in the process of writing the Constitution to 9 states. And then they sent it out, and the people ended up ratifying it with 9 states, and it became the Constitution of the United States. So not only is the Constitution Convention an autonomous body that can choose to do what they wish, and I'm glad they did what they did in 1787, but I don't trust anybody today. Ask yourself where the George Washingtons are, the Ben Franklins, the James Madisons, the George Masons, the Wilsons, the Randolphs. I mean, you can make the list as good as I can. Look in the back of that book she just handed to you. You'll see the guys that signed it. Where are they today? There aren't any. And if they are, they'd stay with what we got. But at any rate, so the danger of having a convention today is that they will possibly set the Constitution aside, write a new one, and ratify it by some means. Text messaging, I don't know. 26 states, I don't know. Majority of Congress, I don't know. I don't know what they might write into it. So that's the danger of a convention right now. There's a great effort to have a convention. We have never been at greater risk than we are today to have a convention. Never in the whole history of the United States. There's a well-funded effort, and it started in Utah. Well, I don't know if it started here, but Utah has been at the center of the action. Many of our legislators have been pushing it. It's well-funded out of a place just east of here. There's a lot of people that live up in the Alpine area that are putting big money into this. Millions of dollars to do this. Okay? But some people say, well, Scott, it's in the Constitution. They must have meant for us to use it. I say, yes. And then I give my opinion. And it is my opinion. But I try to demonstrate it with the words of guys like Blackstone, who was a mentor of the Founding Fathers. I try and use the words of Founding Fathers about the inspired nature of the effort that were put together in their Constitution Convention of 1787. I take the words of Latter-day Prophets, and I take the scriptures, and I say, from these I understand this, and I'll summarize it. There's a 10-page white paper I've got out there that someday we could maybe talk about if you want. But from these I understand this, that the Savior works within the law. Who gave the law of Moses? This is not a trick question. It was God. It was Jesus Christ. It was Jehovah, wasn't it? Okay? He gave the law. Now, if you roll forward some centuries, and in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, what does the Savior say? I came not to destroy the law, but to fulfill the law. He works within the law. If you've got the Latter-day Saint scriptures in the third chapter, in 3rd Nephi, you'll understand that he gives a greater exposition of that when he says that he fulfilled the law rather than destroyed it. And he works within the law. The Savior gave the law. He works within that law to continue his assignment. Okay, does that make any sense to you? I hope so, because it's the way he does business. So, why is the Constitution Convention option in there? Because when the Savior comes, I believe, he'll call a convention. And there will be those that understand the sound doctrines of liberty, an agency, this God-given thing that the war in heaven was about, for goodness sakes. Moses chapter 4, if you want to read that. We'll quote that in a minute on the screen up here, but if I don't get too many shiny objects out there for me. But the fact of the matter is, that's what this whole thing's about. This God-given agency. That's what the war in heaven was about. There were 2 things it was about. One was, are mankind going to be free to have their own agency? Because Satan sought to destroy the agency of man. And the second thing is dethroning God. Satan wanted to push him aside and sit on his throne. Okay, and I'm giving a lot of pretty broad doctrine here, and we can document all of this, okay, in case anybody wonders. But the fact of the matter is that it was agency and dethroning God. Christ stood forth and said, I stand with the Father's plan. Everybody here said, to greater or lesser degree, I'm sure, probably most of you were in the front line saying, me too. But Satan wanted to dethrone God. Is that happening today? Is there an effort to dethrone God today? I wish there were time today. Look over at Rudy, but this thing about the First Amendment, we can prove unequivocally that that did not mean government was to be adversarial against religion. It is not. That is not what the First Amendment means, in spite of what the Congress and the courts are saying nowadays, and what tradition has become since the early 60s. when David O'McKay talked